All right, another edition of the Bill Seng podcast. I'm so glad to be here with you today. And there's one thing I want to talk about, one thing alone. And before we get into that, I want to remind you to jump on to williamhseng.com and check out the merchandise there. We have t-shirts, we have a tumbler that's available for pre-order right now, or if you just want to contribute in some way to the program, feel free to do so there also. So again, that's williamhseng.com. Also, I'd like to remind you to like, share, and subscribe to this program. Our goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and 1,000 subscribers on Rumble. All your support, anything you can do, whether it is subscribing or whether it's purchasing merchandise at the store, contributing in whatever way you can is helpful to us. So thank you once again and welcome to the Bill Seng podcast. There's one topic and one topic alone I'm going to be talking about today. I hope that it doesn't hit too raw of a nerve with people, but here we go. We're going to jump right into it anyway. And of course, that is going to be the Joe Biden speech from this past week. I believe it was either Thursday or Friday, right before Labor Day weekend. And it's oftentimes I've seen labeled as Joe Biden's creepy speech. And lots of people are calling him Dark Brandon because of it. That there is this really eerie red lighting in the background. And as I watched the opening of the speech, it all started off that everything was normal as far as the lighting, very natural lighting. And then all of a sudden, when he went to walk out, this red light came on. Now, in fairness, it looked like there was a blue light elsewhere. And maybe there is a white light, I'm guessing, too, as I guess that they're trying to make it look like the colors of the American flag, perhaps. But the way that the television caught it made it look really, really creepy. And his demeanor wasn't any better. And I've actually got some quotes here from that speech that were particularly disturbing to many people. And I agree, they should be disturbing to people because people said that Donald Trump was a divisive president. I don't think so at all. I think he was a very unifying president. He captured lots of the grievances of the American people, capitalized on them in terms of becoming the president, and even did his best to fulfill his campaign promises, which, by the way, if you are a politician in Washington, D.C., that is one of the most dreadful things you can possibly do is fulfill your campaign promises, because that means you actually care about these filthy little things they call the citizens of the United States of America. So first quote that I have from Joe Biden from his speech the other day, it says, "I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those moments that determine the shape of everything that's to come after. And now America must choose to move forward or to move backwards." It's a very fascinating quote right there, as he said that we're at a point where we're going to choose to either move forward or move backwards. I got a question. Is moving forward the raising of our gas prices? I mentioned a story sometime last week in one of my previous episodes of the Bill Seng podcast, where California just passed legislation to ban the selling of gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Okay, so by 2035, new car lots cannot be selling gas-powered vehicles. They can sell them at used car lots, but not at new car lots, which means, of course, reduction of gas stations and all of that will naturally go along with it once they start to phase out. Now, in California, what problem do they have right now? Well, California, the government actually made a statement to stop plugging in your electric cars right now in 2022. This is 13 years before this is to take effect, and just 1 week after they said that they were going to ban gas-powered cars by 2035. If the electric grid cannot handle electric cars right now, is it going to be able to handle it in 2035, or are they going to be looking for something else? Also, I know that's just the state of California, but you look at what happened to the gas prices a few months back. They rose so high. I mean, where I live, the gas prices rarely, maybe under George W. Bush, I don't remember that well, I can't recall a time in my lifetime when they went over $5. They might have during the Bush years, but I can't remember. And they exceeded the $5 mark, and it was making things really hard on a lot of people. And what was that all about? Well, they closed down the Keystone Pipeline. There was unrest in the Middle East. There is unrest between the Russia and Ukraine conflict. So all sorts of problems there. And now we're having to depend on other nations for our gasoline supply, for our oil supply, to have fossil fuels available to us so that we can drive our cars. And that is actually all part of a larger plan. And it's not conspiratorial. Joe Biden and his predecessor, Barack Obama, wanted to put the fossil fuel industry out of business, particularly coal. And that's any sort of fossil fuel they're talking about right there. And you can tell just by looking at what Joe Biden's energy secretary is talking about, Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg was being interviewed the other day, and they're asking him about the electric grid. They're asking him about green energy, and he wants to move in the direction of green energy. And even though he knows that nobody can afford an electric car at this point in history, not nobody, but it's going to make things even more difficult. If you can't afford $5 a gallon per gas, how easy is it going to be for you to afford an electric car? And of course, their solution is subsidies for those. But mark my words here, this is kind of scary because they still want to phase out fossil fuels. If the Democrats win the House and the Senate in November, if they maintain both of those, mark my words, gas prices are going to skyrocket. What you saw just a few months back, you ain't seen nothing yet, because nothing's going to stand in the way of them accomplishing their vision to eliminate the fossil fuel industry. Now, it won't happen overnight. It won't happen in the next 2 years even. But I just about guarantee that is their plan, is to get rid of the fossil fuel industry. Now, they'll never be able to fully do it, because if they think that fossil fuels is merely gas-powered cars, they are off their rocker, because fossil fuels are used for many more things, many other products that you don't even realize right now. So that's the first quote right there. And so time to move forward or to move backwards. I think that the country is moving backwards significantly in many ways. And that's just one example right there. I think that racially will get worse if he gets reelected. I think that just across the board, things won't be good if we continue to go with Joe Biden. Next quote. Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. Did you hear that? Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they cheated. I recall 2016. Didn't something happen in 2016 after Donald Trump won the election? Oh, yes, Russia collusion. I remember that witch hunt that went on for 2 years that was absolutely baseless. And it turned out that there's more collusion from Donald Trump's opponent, Hillary Clinton, more collusion with Russia from her than what was discovered on Donald Trump's behalf. In fact, absolutely zero evidence was found regarding Russian collusion with the Trump campaign in Russia. And Michael Flynn, unfortunately, he paid the price for just being around in Donald Trump's camp, that he actually didn't do anything wrong. He got in trouble for a phone call, I believe, that he made to Russia before they're actually in office. And I can't remember if that was on the campaign trail or if that was actually after they won. I don't remember, but ultimately he paid a huge price for simply being on Donald Trump's side, and they tried to link him to all that. They dragged his name through the mud. I think they ultimately pardoned him, and rightfully so. He really deserved to be pardoned because he actually did nothing wrong. But not just that. So they make these claims about Republicans, MAGA Republicans, as Joe Biden likes to refer to them, as saying that either we won or you cheated. Well, first of all, let's be honest. I'm not going to make any claims right now. But because I can't say that Joe Biden had anything less than 81 million votes. Wink, wink. Right? I can't say anything less than Joe Biden had more votes than Barack Obama, Donald Trump when he set the vote count record in 2016, and Hillary Clinton. I mean, my goodness. You know and I know that Joe Biden is far more popular than Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama. Something tells me you're not buying that. But you see, I saw this video the other day about a rally. And what had happened is Donald Trump and Joe Biden had both held rallies in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania this past week. And they showed a video of what it looked like at the Trump rally and what it looked like at the Biden rally. The Trump rally was an entire stadium filled with people who were excited, who are energized. They're dressed in their red, white, and blue. They look alive. And it is just unbelievable how many people showed up to this event. Now, the Joe Biden event seriously looked like a high school auditorium filled with maybe 100 people. And they weren't excited. They were dressed in very drab colors. That's inconsequential, but I think it does add to it. They're not excited. They don't look excited. They look drained. They look depressed. They look like that they don't have a whole lot of hope. At this Trump rally, it looks absolutely incredible. But of course, that has nothing to do with Joe Biden having gotten 81 million votes this past election cycle, and Donald Trump exceeding his previous vote count, getting more votes than what he did in 2016 and setting a record. Then he got more in 2020 than what he did in 2016. But of course, we know that Joe Biden, of course, had 81 million votes. So who can argue about that, right? I mean, after all, we don't want to get banned from social media or anything. Next quote. Not even a majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. Something that the elected officials in the Democrat Party do not understand about people on the right. We do not simply believe things because we are told by somebody on the radio, on television, or if they're an elected official. The people that he's referring to here that are the mainstream Republicans that he can work with, they are the John McCains. They are the Mitt Romneys, or who's that lady who just got beat in the Republican primary? Oh, I think I remember. Liz Cheney, correct? I think that those are the people that he's talking about right there. And they actually do not... Let's talk about this for a minute. What happened with Liz Cheney? Why did she lose her primary? It's because she betrayed her voting base. During her election, she painted a picture of herself that was in alignment to the values of her voters. If not, they just figured that she was the only Republican that they could vote for at that time. Only candidate that could be elected. And afterwards, when she started betraying, I don't know if betray is the right word. Maybe that's a little bit extreme. But when she showed that she was not in alignment with the vision that Donald Trump had, she suffered. Especially when she started siding with information that was just very clearly not true and supporting narratives opposed to facts. And so her voting base decided to abandon her and go with somebody else, and rightfully so. The Mitt Romneys, the John McCains that have been out there, they've never been people worthy of the votes that they garnered because they were not faithful to their voters ever. I mean, John McCain was a Republican for how long? And he oftentimes, he was very reliable when it came to voting against his party. Not in every issue. There are certain things he'd align with Republicans on, but he oftentimes aligned himself with the Democrat Party. And that was a shame. Likewise with Mitt Romney. He did a lot of the same things that Liz Cheney did in betraying her voter base, and I think that he did so even more so, especially after so many people came out to vote for him when he ran for office after the terrible slander done to his name when he ran against Barack Obama. I mean, at that time, we all thought that Mitt Romney was a very decent person, but since then, it's been exposed that he is nothing less than a creature of the swamp. Very sad and disappointing, especially with how much people put their trust and hope in him during the 2012 election. But as I was saying, we don't simply believe what we hear if it's said by somebody who's famous or popular. I was a longtime listener of Rush Limbaugh before he passed away, and that was something he oftentimes said, and I very much agree with it, that people, and I take that back, not that he would say, but his callers would actually say, they said the first time they listened to him, they'd be driving, they'd turn their radio on, just needed something to listen to. All of a sudden, they heard this guy's voice, and he was saying things that they agreed with. It wasn't like they were strapped down to a chair and forced to listen to him until they changed their minds to conform to every idea that he was promoting. No, they already espoused the values that he was speaking, and they're agreeing with him, and that's why he garnered such a huge base of listeners, why he was the largest talk radio show in the country in history. So we are not people who are monochrome, I guess, in our thinking. Republicans, conservatives, I will say, conservatives actually have very diverse belief systems, have actually very diverse values and opinions and on different topics. I mean, it's incredible. I'm amazed that we're able to rally around any one candidate. I remember in the 2016 primary, is so frustrating for me. I was a Ted Cruz guy, and other people I thought would be along with me on that were either Marco Rubio guys or Chris Christie guys or Rand Paul guys or Donald Trump guys or Ben Carson guys. And it was so frustrating because every one of those candidates actually had different beliefs on different issues that mattered to different people. And that made it very difficult to rally around one person. But that's like what I said. Donald Trump was a unifying figure in that. He is perhaps the most down the middle, centralizing figure I have ever seen in politics in my lifetime. And I'm 38 years old. I can't say that I'm very, very old or that I've seen lots of candidates or lots of presidents. But in my experience, I have seen him as being the most unifying figure in American politics as far as the people are concerned. Now, when it comes to politicians, that's a different story altogether because they were all against him at some point in time. But I think the majority of the American people are for Donald Trump, and they will support him. And I think that he'll easily get the primary nod once again when that process, when that cycle begins once again. So, is the MAGA Republican a threat to the country? No. And I'd really like to know where Joe Biden is coming from in relation to that comment. What was your plan of action if you think that the MAGA Republican is a threat to America? And what does it even mean to be a threat to America exactly? I'm very curious as to what that is. And I guess that we will look at what he has to say here as being a threat to America. MAGA forces, this is a quote by Joe Biden, MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards, Biden said, backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. Wow. So what does this mean? This actually takes a little bit of translation, and I have an advanced degree in liberalese and progressivese. It's a double major that I did right there, and being able to translate those two parties, as they're very closely related. If you listen to my talk about what is conservatism, Very, very closely related parties. And you have to understand a little bit of both in order to understand what he's saying here when he says that MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose. Okay, when he says right to choose, what does that mean? Well, abortion, of course. That's the only thing that right to choose means. What do you think that he means, that you have a right to determine whether or not you should be allowed to get vaccinated or something? That is ludicrous. Of course he doesn't mean you should have a right to choose it. Remember Barack Obama back in Obamacare and all of that, when he said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. When you like your plan, you can keep your plan. And then Obamacare took effect, and that was a lie. So under a Biden America that has a very similar vision of healthcare, you wouldn't have that choice either. Lots of things, you lose your choices on fossil fuels or electric cars. You're going to lose your choice there if we stick with this administration and if we stick with the Democrat Party. So who is really wanting to go backwards here? We're wanting to make progress in things that work. And the only thing they seem ready to care about is abortion, what they call the right to choose. And by the way, when they say the right to choose, that absolutely disgusts me. Because you have a right to choose well before you have an abortion. You have a right to choose contraception. You have a right to choose abstinence. You have a right to choose on so many different levels. You have a right to choose to wait till marriage. So you have choices. And making the choice not to abstain, not to use contraception, not to wait till marriage, not to give the child up for adoption, those are lots of choices right there. And abortion is a very extreme option. And I don't think that it's ever necessary. And I mean that sincerely. There are other options opposed to abortion. But for some reason, they like the shedding of innocent blood of babies before they're born. And after they're born as well. So the right to choose, no thank you, Joe. That's what you're talking about is not just backwards thinking there. It is barbaric thinking. No right to privacy. Well, what does this mean? Let's talk about a right to privacy. What he's talking about is a right to privacy for your children in regards to abortion, in regards to gender identity, in regards to contraceptive use, in regards to just about anything. And what do I mean by that? Well, public schools can educate your children in any of these things without your knowledge. They can encourage your children, your daughters, to get abortions without your knowledge of it. They can pass out contraceptives to your children without your knowledge, and that is their right to privacy. Now, that's not solely what they mean by right to privacy. Ultimately, when you boil it all down, even when you take out those things, what is the main right to privacy he's talking about? Well, abortion, of course. What else would he be talking about but abortion? Right to privacy, should we be allowed to have people spying on us, like from the government or anything? I think that there's a certain party that's very big on that. I think they may have even spied on a particular presidential candidate who eventually became president before he was president. And they didn't seem too hesitant about that. That's when he was still a private citizen. Of course, I'm talking about Donald Trump was spied on when he was still a candidate and even after he became the president of the United States. So what is this whole thing about no right to privacy? No right to contraception. Do I have to say it again? What are they talking about here? They're talking about abortion. Almost every single one of these is about abortion right here. And that means either abortion through actually going into a clinic or abortion through taking a particular type of pill. And I'm not talking about just contraceptive pills. I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill contraceptive pill, birth control pill. I'm talking about there actually are abortive pills that actually, once the baby is conceived, you take it and it terminates the pregnancy. That's what I'm talking about. And I can't think of a single Republican candidate that is running on the basis that they want to get rid of contraception. And I also can't think of a single Republican that would run on the ticket or even stands for the idea there shouldn't be any contraception in the United States of America. I know there are religious organizations that prefer that. I know there are fringe minorities that are against that. And by the way, I'm not saying that I'm pro or against contraceptives, but that's not really what they're talking about. They're talking about abortion. That's what they're talking about when they say no right to contraception, no right to abortion. That's plain and simple what they're talking about. Basically what he's done is he said the same thing 3 different ways. There's no right to choose, no right to privacy, and no right to contraception. So no right to abortion, no right to abortion, no right to abortion. And the last one is no right to marry who you love. Well, you know what? Even before, I can't remember what year it was now, even before the Supreme Court made the decision to allow for same-sex marriage, you were allowed to marry whoever it was you wanted to. You were allowed to marry the person you loved. But they had to be of the opposite sex. You get that, right? And when I say that, I don't even say it like sarcastically or sneakily. I say that by definition, that marriage is a very specific term, meaning that a man is uniting himself with a woman with the intention of bringing forth a family. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily everybody's intention in marriage, but I'm saying that that is where marriage all started. It was founded in order to bring forth families and to preserve and protect the family unit, with a mother and a father at its foundation. And of course, Black Lives Matter, they want to eliminate the nuclear family, as we talked about before. And what he's talking about, of course, is same-sex unions. And by the way, from a constitutional perspective, you can do whatever you want. I mean, in terms of this, it's something not mentioned in the Constitution. If you pass a constitutional amendment on it, whatever, I think that's a bad idea. But ultimately, right now, it's not in the Constitution of the United States. And being the case, it shouldn't be an issue of constitutionality. It shouldn't be an issue being addressed by the federal government. And I think that states should be allowed to rule on that themselves. I don't think that it's something that should be enshrined. But again, are we going to hunt you down if you decide that you're going to be unified with somebody of the same sex? Well, no. But this goes much deeper than this. This goes into other areas of human relations, I'll put it. Relationship to others and relationships even to yourself. I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but right now, in this last one that he said, we've taken a very dark route in America as it relates to what we're doing to the family unit, that we have dismantled, we redefined marriage, and we are dismantling and reinventing what it means to be family. And it's very scary. And I think there's lots of people, lots of children that lack protection, lots of women that lack protection, and many men who are insecure as a result of that as well. So, Joe Biden, in your speech, it was very divisive speech. It definitely alienates people like myself. I was, from the get-go, I'll put it this way. At the beginning, 2016, when Donald Trump won the nomination, I was not too excited about it. But as time went on, and I saw how strongly the media and other elected officials were against him, I became more of a fan of the guy. And I think that what he did in office was fantastic. I think that he's the best president I've had in my lifetime. Of course, I can't remember the Ronald Reagan years all that well, but Ronald Reagan did make one or two serious mistakes that really set up the Democrat Party for huge victories in the future that we are unfortunately seeing up to this day. But Donald Trump really has done a lot of good for our country. I hope that we see him back really, really soon. I hope that he is able to make an impact on this country again. I'd be totally fine if Ron DeSantis, which, by the way, that's more so ideologically who I line myself with, is Ron DeSantis. But whether it be Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump as president, I would love to see either one. I think they're both great, and I think that they provide a lot of hope for the American people. But ultimately, let me close with this, though. Whether it be Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Ron DeSantis, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, whatever, it does not matter who is in the White House. God is still on the throne ultimately, and so we have no reason to be afraid. I understand the apprehension. I understand the anxiety over the idea that that these political figures might do great evil against us at some time in history, but ultimately God is still on the throne, and I think there's a lot of hope for America, regardless of whatever happens politically. And I think that what we really need is not a political awakening, but a spiritual awakening. So I'm going to leave it at that. Again, I'd like to thank you. My name is Bill Seng. This is the Bill Seng Podcast. Our goal is 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and 1,000 subscribers on Rumble. So get to it, like, share, and subscribe.